Now, on Emeritus Newsbrief, I'm Lynn Houston. Senator Jim Bunning single-handedly holds back extended unemployment benefits, which includes the subsidy COBRA payments. Bunning rose to object, claiming the extensions were not paid for. A surprise Senator Durbin tried to convince Bunning to change his mind.
But I would like to remind him that on November the 4th of last year, you issued a press release entitled "Bunning Supports Extension of Benefits for Kentucky's Unemployed." Legislation includes Bunning Net Operating Losses Amendment. It passed by a vote of 98-0, and you said, "Kentucky's been hit hard by the current economic downturn. This legislation will lend a helping hand to working families across the Commonwealth who are in search of a job." It wasn't paid for either. The point is, we're in the same recession. It's gotten worse in some areas of the country, particularly in your area of the country. As I reported earlier, unemployment figures are growing in Kentucky. The situation is just as dire and just as serious. I share the senator's concern about our deficit situation, but virtually every reputable economist you'll talk to will tell you that in the midst of a recession, you need to really insert into this economy economic activity and spending, and the money that flows through the fastest is unemployment benefits to those out of work, because they spend it instantly. It goes right back into the economy. This idea of somehow we're going to hold back on unemployment benefits and balance the budget on the backs of unemployed people in Illinois and Kentucky, you couldn't pick a worse strategy or a worse time to do it.
I don't think it's fair to do what you are proposing to do, Senator from Illinois. And I'll be here as long as you're here and as long as all those other senators are here. And I'm going to object every time.
Bunning continued to object, claiming the extended benefits should not be added to the nation's debt. Well, with benefits expiring, Senate leaders are now scrambling to come up with another vote in the next few days. The Senate did pass a jobs bill by a vote of 70-28 as 12 Republicans joined Democrats.
The bill does a number of things that are very important. It cuts businesses' taxes as an incentive to hire unemployed people. It gives business even more tax breaks for keeping those workers on a payroll and investing in their company's future. And 3, it extends and expands 2 important programs, the Build America Bonds program and our Highway Trust Fund.
The jobs bill has been sent to the House, where differences between the two houses are yet to be settled. The House passed its own version last year. The jobs bill gained more urgency as the latest initial unemployment claims figures for the week of February 20th show an increase of 22,000 from the previous week. There was a total of 496,000 initial claims. More proof that long-term unemployment will continue at record levels through most of this year. During testimony before the House Financial Services Committee, Federal Reserve Chairman Bernanke admitted Congress has a delicate balancing act dealing with unemployment and reducing the deficit.
Mr. Chairman, that's really the congressional trade-off that has to be made. Obviously, unemployment is the biggest problem we have, and if the Federal Reserve and the Congress can address that issue, we need to find ways to address that issue. But there are difficult trade-offs that you.
I appreciate it, and I think we are aided by the fact that inflation is not in now or in the near term. It seems to be a problem. Last point I would make, if you could comment briefly, we hear this threat that the rating agencies might reduce our debt rating because of the deficit. Do you think there is any realistic prospect of America defaulting on its debt in the foreseeable future?
There's certainly not, unless Congress decides not to pay, which I don't anticipate. No, I don't anticipate any such problem. I don't anticipate any downgrade. Of course, there are real long-term budget problems that need to be addressed.
I agree with that, but they're not the fear of default. I'm giving investment advice. If you can get a good enough risk premium on treasuries, buy them.
It's extremely difficult, extremely difficult. I don't underestimate in any way how difficult it is. And it's also difficult to address issues which are still a few years away. I understand that as well. But it would be very helpful, even to the current recovery, to markets' confidence, if there were a sustainable, credible plan for a fiscal exit, if you will.
You know, if we don't address them now, I'm not sure we can address them, in a effective way 2 or 3 years from now, or 4 or 5 years.
It'll become increasingly difficult because the cuts that you'll need to make will be even sharper or the tax increase is even sharper.
The Fed is looking at the actions of Goldman Sachs and other financial firms that are reported to be using credit default swaps to make a profit from the financial crisis in Greece, where the government could face a default. Officials in Greece, meanwhile, claim that the conflict of interest in the financial community is making it harder for them to get loans and restructure their debt. More on that story on the Emeritus News National World page. President Obama, Democratic leaders, and Republican leaders meeting at the Blair House in Washington to talk health insurance reform. After a 6-hour summit, it is clear both sides have not changed their views.
As controversial as the efforts to reform health care have been thus far, when you ask people, should we move forward and try to reform the system, people still say yes. They still want to see change. And it strikes me that if we've got an open mind, if we're listening to each other, if we're not engaging in sort of the tit for tat and trying to score political points during the next several hours, that we might be able to make some progress. And if not, at least we will have better clarified for the American people what the debate is about.
I mean, we want you to succeed, because if you succeed, our country succeeds. But we would like respectfully to change the direction you're going on health care costs, and that's what I want to mention here in the next few minutes. I was trying to think about if there were any kind of event that this could be compared with, and I was thinking of the Detroit Auto Show, that you had invited us out to watch you unveil the latest model that you and your engineers had created and ask us to help sell it to the American people, and we go and you do that, and we look at it and we say, hey, that's the same model we saw last year, and we didn't like it, and neither did they, because we don't think it gets us where we need to go and we can't afford it.
It appears likely Democrats will try to pass reform by simple majorities through the reconciliation process, but Republicans can still use tactics to delay it. Toyota Motors facing tough questioning in a House hearing where they were accused of failing the responsibility to protect consumers and the public.
The Toyota way is used in business schools across this country, and the author talks about your company's principles. Principle number 5 reads, build a culture of stopping to fix problems, to get quality right the first time. Mr. Toyota, how did Toyota lose its way? You say in your testimony, your company grew too fast. Some smart lawyers gave you those words. I think what happened was your company went from emphasizing long-term quality values and corporate responsibilities to fighting against safety regulations, against insider influence inside this city and your own capital in Japan, and environmental regulations, and indeed worker rights and card checks inside your companies. So, is it the Toyota way to use insider dealing to change decisions? And is it the Toyota way to push a deregulation agenda that works against the interests of the people of our country and other countries? Do you know how many people in Japan died because of what your company did?
As we pointed out, the development of people, human resources at Toyota may not have kept pace with the pace of expansion. And going forward, to bring about and effect changes to become a better car maker and to become a more transparent car maker, I think is the role and mission of myself as president.
GM says it will shut down the Hummer division after a proposed sale fell through, but the company did not rule out the possibility of another buyer who could save the company before production comes to a halt. GM was successful in selling Saab this week, closing a deal that has Dutch automaker Spyker taking over the Saab brand. The latest on the biggest issues in public policy at emeritusnews.com. And live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the Emeritus News channel at livestream.com. That's an Emeritus News Brief. I'm Lynn Houston.